Now let's talk about Beautiful.ai, one of the established AI presentation design tools on the market. Now I signed up for a free trial to test the platform and assess if it can help me speed up the design process, especially when it comes to data visualization. Because most of the presentation tools on the market now have slide layout options and AI content generators. However, where most people struggle is in the data visualization category. How do you turn long-winded content and cluttered slides into something clean and scannable? You need clean slides, especially if you plan to use animation to introduce your content in a logical order. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I still recommend PowerPoint to most of my clients, especially if they are a Microsoft-based organization, because you want to ensure that your presentations work well with your Excel and your Word documents, and they stay safe on your company's private system. And that's why I wanted to test Beautiful.ai, because Beautiful.ai has an add-in that integrates with PowerPoint. Now, an add-in works a lot like an app. By installing the add-in, I should be able to use Beautiful.ai design features directly in PowerPoint. So in this video, I'll review two ways to use Beautiful.ai. First, I'll use the online platform and I'll export the file to PowerPoint and see how that turns out. And next, I'll use the PowerPoint add-in. And in the end, I'll compare the results and give you my final assessments. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, so here we are on the Beautiful.ai interface, and you can see right away it's very intuitive. On the left-hand side, you have the file management system where you can create folders and manage your files. And if you click on resources, you're able to customize your brand. So you can click here, change your brand colors, the typography, the decoration, though it is a bit limited, but if you're starting out, it's a good option. And also, how do you want your footer to work? Do you want your footer to be on the left or right? Do you want to show page numbers or not? And then you can upload your logo. Now, I wanted to note on typography, because I did spend actually most of yesterday testing the platform, is that they are limited. So they do have a bit of Google fonts in here. So if you have your own custom font for your brand, you're going to have to upload it to match that. And you want to make sure that the font that you're choosing is web compatible, because this is a web-based platform, and also that what it's going to work like from a licensing perspective. So do keep that in mind. So once you've customized the theme to fit your brand, now you're ready to create a presentation. Whether you have a brand or you don't, Beautiful.ai is going to help you even create designs as well. So from the design, a create presentation perspective, you can start from blank if you already know what you want to create and you've used the platform for a while. You can generate with AI from a started template, or maybe a template that somebody shared with you, maybe your designer or someone on the team, or import with PowerPoint. Now, I have to give a caveat. I did try the import from PowerPoint and nothing happened. I waited for over 10 minutes and the file would not upload, even though it was small. But either way, when you click on import from PowerPoint, it does give you a caveat that it is importing them as images. You can choose to make editable at any time. I'm not sure how they can be editable if you've imported them as images. I tried to upload the file. It didn't work. So I wouldn't say that's the strong point of Beautiful.ai. However, I'm going to test the generate with AI, because that's what most people are looking for right now. So let's start with the generate with AI, and you're going to see that it's also very simple and intuitive. Just like most other platforms, you can enter the prompt. Now, the prompt is the command that you wanted to do to create the presentation. So you can either type it or you can speak it in a microphone. And if you're not sure how Beautiful.ai, what kind of prompts can work, they have given you here some examples. So investor pitch deck for Series A, etc. And the more details you give it, of course, the more it is going to help you create that content. Now, from the content perspective, you also have the train with additional context. Now, most of the platforms have that. You can train your AI to the context. And in the case of Beautiful.ai, you can upload a file. You can share a website that probably has your industry language or your own company website, or maybe your competitor's website. So it can get some of the context, as well as if you want to type the text. Now, I can see here it's powered by another company, so I don't think that they are specifically creating that content generation tools, because many of the companies now have a API integration with some of the big players like ChatGPT or the Google one. So let's go ahead now and create one of the default presentations, and I'm going to say generate presentation. All right, I think it did not finish when I clicked generate. Let's just see now, it's generating. Now, I did try this yesterday several times, and I noticed that the template, the design, and the content it did change from pitch deck to from a different generation. Let's just see here. All right, so here it is. Yeah, the images have changed, the fonts. So it is every time I generate the presentation, it is using random fonts and layouts and images. So it's not the same. And I can see here now it's 9 slide designs. In other cases, it gave me a few more slide designs. So it is always, if you want to generate several files, you might find that you have different outputs. Now, in terms of the design, you can see here that it is very basic. It is using the grid system. So you're going to notice that a lot of the slides, when we get into the editing, they work based on a grid system. So most of the images are going to be a square as a starting point, unless you specifically break the editing, the smart edit, and then you do some manual formatting. And some of the diagrams, I'm going to show you how that works. But now first, let's just go back to the other option, which is create from a starter template. So let's say you don't have a context. What you're really looking for is the design, not necessarily the content. You want to put your own content. So you can use some of their pre-made templates. Now, I like how they have divided them based on startup, presentation makeover, marketing, business, sales, etc. And if you scroll down, you're going to get some of the ideas from a design ideas. So this is going to be great for a new startup founder that doesn't have a designer and you still don't know how to design slides. It's going to give you some ideas. And if you scroll towards the bottom, you're going to find some pitch deck makeovers for some of the most commonly known brands on the market right now. So you can click through them and see which one is more relevant to your industry. However, I'm going to click here because I wanted to show you something that's a pro and also that could be a barrier to entry for some people. So for example, if I click on this template, let it generate. So you can see here in this case, it gave us 14 slides, and with the slide sorter, I can see them all here at a glance. Now they all look great and we can make some edits with them, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. However, you're going to notice that there's this slide, this one, and this one, and this one. They look that they work well together. And if you take a closer look, you're going to notice that it's really an image background. So this is not generated by Beautiful.ai. This is something that was created from an outside source. So which means you still need a designer. So if you're trying to bypass the designer and have these backgrounds, it's not going to work that way if you wanted complex designs. However, you just wanted to use stock imagery and use the square image placeholders, then it's going to be a good start for you. Now, something else I did like about the platform is not only can you generate with AI the entire presentation, you can add slides. So for example, if I click here on add slides, I can go in here and use some of their pre-made layouts. Now, if you hover over any of these, you can notice it's going to give you some examples. And also towards the bottom, once you click on a particular list, so for example, if I say data and charts, let's just see here, you're going to notice that these are some of the smart art options that are reactive, and you can update the data. And at the bottom, it's giving you some examples, because if you click on one of these right away, it's going to give you a blank slide. So if you still don't know how to edit that type of diagrams, it could be challenging. However, if you're a newbie, you can go to some of their pre-made slides and you can choose one. So for example, if I choose this particular slide here, let's pick here, you can see it updated it. And in terms of the colors, right away, it's still using some of the colors that are available with this particular template. So if I click here, I can make changes to the colors as well. And the way the smart art options work is you can see here, depending on which diagram or which smart art you created, that you do have some editability options. So you can see here, if you wanted to show that data, you can do that. So I do like that. Now, something else you can do is generate with AI. So if you're creating a slide and you want to add an extra slide, and now you can do that. So let me move the microphone here so I can type. And I'm going to say here, agenda slide for a full day event featuring 2 morning and 2 afternoon sessions. All right, so here we are, and I'm going to say generate slide. So you can see here right away, it created that agenda for me. Now, as we look at these slides, of course, if you wanted to make some edits, each slide has its own editing tool. So you're going to find that you can edit based on the layout. So if you click on the layout, depending on what type of slide you're using, you can choose to have with a title or no title. So something like that. Or if you wanted to have a footer or no footer. So they're very basic, but it does have that flexibility. And let's say here you wanted that to be 3 columns or 1 column, you do have that options. I'm going to say auto generate. And if I switch to 3 columns, you can see here it switches. It doesn't look that great. I'm going to go with 1 column. And now it looks a little bit more readable. However, it is squished. So in this particular case, I can go in here and switch the layout. And you can see that's really the power of Beautiful AI, is that it does that automatic formatting for you based on the content. Now, if you go through all of the diagrams, you're going to find that they all have their own reactive ways. So for example, I showed you this one here with the functionality. Now, what ends up happening, for example, if I want to bring that title up here, because I'm in a big boardroom and I want to make sure that the text is readable, especially when there's people in the room and maybe there's somebody blocking their lower view of the slides. And that's something that I've seen with many of the presentations on the market in templates, is many people have very small fonts. They're trying to make it look fancy and they're not keeping the context of the presentation in mind. Now, if you're online, that's fine. You can read most things on your screen. But if you're in a big room and you want to project that on a wall, then you want to make sure that everyone in the room, including the people in the back, can see the presentation. So this is where I found it a little bit limiting. So for example, if I want to move the location of the fonts here, I want to move that to the top, I cannot do that. But I can move some of the layouts around, which is great. So it works a lot like some of the online platforms on the market. Now, when it comes to font size, you can see here that with the font, the way, if I wanted to make the font bigger, while it's still in the Smart Slide option, it works with the percentage. So kind of like CSS. So you can see here, if I wanted to make that font bigger, I can do that here and make that bigger, but I can still not move the font to the top because it seems to be locked in this particular location. Now, the only way I can do that is move to the font to the top is if I go into here and I say convert to classic slide. Now, if I convert to classic slides, I'm going to use the editability of the diagram. I'm not going to be able to change the values. So if you feel you need to do that, I would recommend duplicating the slide. So you can duplicate it so you still have an editable one as a backup. And then you can go in here and say convert to classic slide. Now, by doing that, let me just close this window. You can see now it has become a standard editable slide. So now I can click and move things around and treat them like images. So this would be a text. Let me just move that here. More finicky. So let's say I'm in a big room and I want the text to be at the top because the graphic is not really as important. Now I have that capability to move things manually. And you'll notice once you convert to the classic slide layout, so let me just go back here. Now the font is no longer working with percentages. Now you're working with the font size. So I do see it a lot working like a web design layout. So if you've used any of these click and drag layouts, it does work that way. And now the capability with the smart the design at the bottom, that is gone. So do keep that in mind. So now let's go and explore some of the other options in terms of the diagram. So what I did here is I created some of the slides that I tested yesterday to show you some of them that where they could come in handy or they could create issues. So I did like that they have the timer, and this timer slide is, if you're clicking here on some of the slides, you're going to find that they are divided based on visual impacts, diagram, comparison, people, if you're creating teams and things like that. Now, when it comes to the image placeholders, for example, if I click on Teams and go to the bottom here, let's just show you, it's loading. Okay, I'm not seeing any of this one. Let's see team members. All right, so you can see here the way it works. If I click on a slide without choosing a specific layout, it's going to give me a blank one. But if I wanted some samples, I'm going to have to go towards the bottom. And let me just click here on people so we can see some of the examples. Pre-made, so that's going to make it a little bit more easy. And if you wanted to see more examples, you can click here on browse all presentations, but because what's going to do, it's going to go through some of your pre-made presentations. If you already created them and you already have your teams, that's going to be an option. So let me just cancel that here and go back into the okay, let's go back in here. We're trying to create a presentation. So I wanted to show you how to create teams. For example, this one here with the rounded image. So if I choose a team slide with the rounded image, all right, let me just see here. It's still loading. Inspiration gallery. There was one with a rounded image. However, because the template or the theme that I started with in this particular slide is using the square images which were set in the default theme, the team slides also came out as okay, let's just go in here. There we go. They're also coming out as square. So if you wanted to make the images now rounded, so for example, if you change your mind and you wanted to make your images rounded, once again, you're going to have to unbreak that. But in the meantime, you can still add team members. You can see here that it automatically adjusts and it gives you that room. Now, I did find that it goes to a maximum of 8, which is great. And now if you wanted to change the font size, because this is too big, you can see here it did not do that automatically. It just said there's too much text. So you still have to go in here and do some manual changes yourself. So while it is giving you the smart art options, it's not 100% automated. You still have to go in here and know how to make some of these edits. But it is a great starting point. Now, if you change your mind and you want to make the images round, you're not able to do that now in the smart design option. So you're going to have to say convert to classic, and if I say okay, and now when I click on the image, I'm going to get an extra option here which lets me choose a circle. If I want a circle or not, let me choose a circle. Filled. Okay, all right. It seems to have kept the border. I'm not sure why it kept the border, but not the you can see here, maybe I have to change the border as well. Let's just go here. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. No frame. Okay, no frame. Yeah, I don't know. It did lose some its functionality. So keep that in mind when you're working on these. It does work very well when you're using the smart layouts, but when you break the slide apart, you're going to face some issues with the editing as well. Now, something else that I did notice is, for example, with slides like this one here. So if I want to move elements around, I am able to move them here. But if elements, let me just see here. If I click on a context, I'm trying to see if there's another slide. I wanted to show you something that's important. And that is slides with multiple content. I think things like this here. All right, so you can see here with this one, we've got the box, we've got the content with the 2 lines. So we have the 1 line and the 2 line, and just like all the other slides, you can make some changes here. So I do like that. You can see here that it's responsive as long as you keep the slide in the smart slide layout. But now let's say you wanted to make changes and you want to move things slightly bigger. Maybe one item is bigger than the other. So if you convert slide and I say okay, I did face an issue, which is you can see here now the two content boxes have become one. So even though I can see that they are separate, I can move one line over the other, but I think I can move one line over the other. It has become jammed and I can't find a way to ungroup them. No matter what I've clicked, I don't know, maybe there is. So if you know there's a way to ungroup these two, let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, I did not find a way and I found it frustrating. I could not break these apart. So when it comes to the editing part, even on the platform, the minute you convert to classic, it's not going to have that feature as before. As long as you stay using the smart slides and the smart art design for the diagrams, then it is going to work. You can see here with this one as well. If I click 3, it's going to do that automatically, but the minute I break things apart, it's going to create issues for me. So if I convert here once again, you can see here now they've become as one object, and no matter what I've tried, I cannot figure out how to break them apart. So I don't know. Maybe if you know, let me know. So let me go back here into some of the slide options. So once again, if you go through all of these, you're going to find that they do make data visualization easier. So for example, this one here I did like. Let's just go back to this one, because you can click in here and you can add segments. So you can see if you wanted to create different segments, it's going to help you create these quickly. If you wanted to create the labels, it's going to add them here for you, and then you can change the font, what is bigger, what is smaller, depending on what you're talking about. But you can see here now when I change the font on one of them, it's changing all of them. So if I wanted to highlight one with a bigger font only and one with a smaller font, I'm going to probably have to convert it to a classic and then make these edits. So do keep that in mind. While it helps with the initial concept, the editing part is a little bit tricky. And I have to say that's the same with Microsoft Smart Art. So if you ever use PowerPoint Smart Arts, that's how they work. They're great too as a starting point, but once you start getting into the editing, you're going to have to put on your designer hat and learn how to use the vector editing in the software itself. Otherwise, you can see here a lot of the smart art options are easy to use. So I'm not going to go through them all because I just wanted to show you how they work. However, let me just now work on the image placeholders. Now, when it comes to the image placeholders, you have the option to replace the image. And I did look at some of their assets here. it's not that great. You know, there is some images. It's kind of comparable to what Microsoft has in their initial library right now. You can go to the web images, which you can do with PowerPoint, a stock video. So once again, it's not a big variety. It's a great starting point. If you don't really care about the design or anything unique, you're going to find something to fill your needs. However, where I did find it came in handy is with the icons. I did like how they had more extensive icons that are not available in PowerPoint right now. So if anything, I do feel that is the strong point here. And for the logos, of course, you can, whatever logos you have updated yourself. So unless these are the ones they have uploaded for the samples, so you can upload your own images and your own logos, and then you'll be able to add them into your presentations. Now, here's another way to create slides with Beautiful AI is if you have a blank slide, and then once you have a blank slide, you're able to create your own text boxes. So for example, if I say in here, go in and use the blank, it's going to allow me to create anything I want to see here. So you're going to see a different menu here. So you can click on the text boxes and you can click and drag and do your own text boxes. Now, what I like about the classic design is that it allows me to adjust the width, whereas with the smart layout, I cannot do that. I have to use the sizing that Beautiful AI has in mind. And what I did like here is that you can have to create shapes. They're not that great, but what I did find that is great with them is that they are responsive. So they do have that functionality, kind of like the one in PowerPoint. I did not see it in Canva yet, but they don't have as many shapes as PowerPoint, but at least it's a good starting point. Now, when it comes to the charts as well, you can add a chart here, and it's going to ask you edit elements. You can import data. So if you wanted to import from Google Slides, your Excel sheets or whatever, you can import that, but that's an extra step. So now you're importing it and using your data on their tables. So if you feel, if you have tables, if you have too many tables, I'm not sure how that's going to work for you. If you don't have any tables or you have just one table, then it could be an option. Now, something else they have is the drag to create a path, which I thought was intuitive. So let me make sure that the line is white so you can see it. It's intuitive, however, it does not support curves. Now, if you've worked with PowerPoint, you know that their PowerPoint has the edit points and it allows you to create shapes and edit with points. It does not have that here. However, it does have that extra. Let me just see here. Where is it? Edit. All right. Is there edit points? I'm not sure how. Oh, edit path. There we go. Edit path. So if I click on the edit path and I click on the plus sign, now it allows me to create extra path points and then create lines. So draw something using the path. It's not that, very powerful as much as PowerPoint, but it could be helpful. Now, in terms of the images, if you have the standard image, the placeholders, you're not going to be able to change the shape. However, if you add the image manually, then you'll be able to click here and change the shape. So if you wanted to create cover slides that have a little bit more organic shapes, you do have that option to do that here. Now, once again, with the text boxes, if you have one text box, I found it's much easier to manipulate. However, the minute you click on one text box and you click enter and you start typing here more text, let me just do that. I ran into the same issue where now I cannot break them apart. So maybe there's a way. If you can figure out, let me know. The only way I found to do that is just delete that second line, because I do like to keep things separately, especially if I wanted to make one line bigger than the other. So when it comes to the editing tools, I found it a little bit frustrating. That could be because I'm still new to the platform. All right, now let's go back and try to export the file and see how that works in PowerPoint, because really that's the only reason I'm testing it, is what happens after we've created these diagrams and we export them to PowerPoint. So I wanted to see what is the functionality, because you can see here right now, if I click on share file, it works beautifully with the sharing online if you keep it on the Beautiful AI platform. So I can allow commenting if I want other people to comment on the file, or an expiry date. So if you're sharing a pitch deck with a specific person and you don't want that file to be visible, you can put an expiry link on it. However, most people can now record video screens, so it's not really going to keep that privacy. If somebody wants to get your presentation, they can get it, but this is how it works. So we're going to click here on the link, and I'm going to go open my web browser, and I'm going to put that link here. Let's just put that here, and we're going to see how that shapes up. So I'm going to click enter. And online, it works beautifully. So if you are keeping it with Beautiful AI, it still works beautifully. You can see here we have that counter, which looks very interactive. You're able to see all the slides in case you are presenting. So it's giving you that great tool. And at the same time, if you wanted on the presentation, if you wanted to, as you're presenting, you wanted to draw, you can start drawing on this slide. So if you're presenting live using their platform. And you can see here, it did give us a bit of the animation that I did not add myself. So I haven't tested the animation feature. It seems to animate some of the content itself on some slides, some not. So I'm assuming there is an animation process, which I did not test. But you can see here, it works well if you are using the online platform. So now let's just go and export it and see what happens if we are able to get these capabilities. Because remember, all of these editable features, as long as it stays in the smart slide or smart art options, they are editable and they are useful. The minute you break them apart and you start wanting to make manual edits, this is where you're going to face some features. So let me go in here and say, what do I have the option here? Export presentation. So I'm going to export the presentation. And I'm going to choose editable PowerPoint. So you can see here you can edit as Google Slides or PDF. Let's see how it's going to do that for a job. And I am going to export. So we've got 31 slides. All right.
5 minutes later.
All right, the download is complete. It took a long time. It took about 4 or 5 minutes to download, and I can see here the file size is 81 megabytes. So it's pretty big for a small presentation of 31 slides. And now I'm opening the file in PowerPoint. So we can see here right away, of course, the timer is not going to work because that's not a functionality from PowerPoint. And I can see that it brought in all the design elements as manual options. So you can see here when I'm looking at the slide layout, it just has one slide, so there's no theme. So which means if you want to add these slides to your existing presentation themes and you're very strict on having your branded themes in the organization, you're going to have to do some more manual formatting and now move these slides over to your theme, because you can see here it did not pick up. Now it did not pick up on the layout, and when I click on the font, of course it's picking a font that's not part of the theme, so it did not create that seamless integration with creating themes with PowerPoint. And now when we come to these elements, you can see here they're broken apart, but once again we have some of these sections where they're in the same text box, kind of the same thing that I faced on the platform where I cannot ungroup them now. So if I wanted to ungroup them to animate them, I'm going to have to do this in PowerPoint, so it's extra work to do that here as well. The same thing, let's just go into some of the diagrams. You can see here now with the diagrams, the arrows lost their connection. So if you wanted to use the connectors from PowerPoint and you wanted to animate, you're going to create extra step, which means we still have to create them again from scratch. So and these presentations, these animations have now lost their interactivity. So if you wanted to animate them, you cannot do that now. You have to do that animation in PowerPoint as well. So if you're keeping everything on the Beautiful platform, it's a great option. If you are importing it as a PowerPoint, well, you're creating extra work. Now there's an extra work. Not only have you created slides that are not part of your theme, now you still have to spend more time and get your designer to do the manual edits. So now let's go in here and look at the add-in to see how the add-in works with PowerPoint directly. So I'm going to click here and say new presentation. And from the new presentation, I'm going to click on the add-ins. Let me just resize the window. Click on insert add-ins, and I'm going to say get add-ins. Now you can see with Microsoft, there is quite a lot of add-ins. And if you look through them, you're going to find that considering there are millions of people who use PowerPoint, you're going to be wondering, why are most of these add-ins having so many low reviews? That's because a lot of people are probably not aware that there is an add-in feature, or they could be restrictions in the organization. Some of the companies, government, education, or financial institutions don't want to open another door to their own data. And by adding these add-ins, it's almost like you're having an app, an extra app on your phone, and now you could be compromising some of the data that could be shared. So I don't know how that works for each company because they are different, but however, we're going to be looking for the one here for Beautiful AI, and we're going to install it and see how that shows up. So you can see here they have their own app. Right now there's only a 3-star review from 20 people, and just like I said, not a lot of people know about the add-in feature. So I'm going to click it, and now you can see why, because Microsoft is giving us that warning that this product is not from Microsoft. So if you plan to install it, they cannot guarantee the results. So for the sake of this example, I'm just going to install it to show you how that works so you can assess if you want to keep it or not. But otherwise, I personally don't like to add add-ins on my software. So I'm going to click here, and now let's see what happens. You can see right away what ended up happening is it added it as an option on the panel, and it has its own panel. So I can close, and if I needed to access it, I can access it here again. And in order to access it, I have to sign in to my paid account. So let me sign in, and I'm going to show you how that looks like. All right, so I've signed in, and the options I see, it's very simple. It says go to library. I tried that, and what it does it opens the interface, which means I have to log in. So it's still not really giving me a shortcut, so I'm going to close it. The only shortcut I have here right now is if I click on add slide. You can see here the add slide option. It is going to edit current. Okay, let me just cancel that. How am I doing add slide? It seems to be taking me to the themes. All right, so I guess, oh, there we go. So I can choose one of the Beautiful AI themes that come out of the box. I can choose some of the saved themes that I have my place. But you can see here the generate with AI is not there. So let me just choose the PowerPoint theme, which came from Microsoft, and I'm going to click on that. And you can see here right away, it's telling me that I need to upload a font. Upload fonts. Your PowerPoint theme uses fonts not yet uploaded to Beautiful AI. And that Aptos font is part of the default font now with Microsoft PowerPoint. So this is the same issue that I showed you on the platform, where they do have a limited fonts, and in case you need them, you have to upload them. And if you don't upload them, you're going to break that connection with your theme. So for now, I'm going to say no, because I don't want to be uploading Microsoft proprietary fonts on somebody else's platform. So I'm going to say no. And you can see here right now, it gave us the same interface that we had on the platform. So once again, I can generate with AI using the same tools. So you're going to get exactly the same tools as the platform, except that they are now accessible in PowerPoint. Now, the issue here we have is, let's just go back here and say generate. Let's create one slide, and I wanted to show you what happens with some of the diagrams if we create them directly in PowerPoint or not. So I'm going to click this theme again here. Once again, create. Is it going to let me create a slide? Oh, there we go. Okay, so let me just go in and go into the data and charts, and I'm going to pick one of these here. So let's say here add item. Okay, if I add the item, all right, we've got all of these items, and assuming I've made my options, and you can see here while I'm in the Beautiful AI window, I can make these changes. However, when I click save, let's see what's going to happen. Save as editable PowerPoint slide. That's what I want. And we're going to import that into here, and you're going to see that it brought them in as images. So once again, just like the export, I'm going to lose the editability of the presentation. And what it did is it added an extra theme here. So not only it did not match my theme, so assuming you have your own theme, it added them, and it added them as graphic images and text. So if this is going to save you time, then it could be a good option for you. However, in my case, I feel like it's going to create an extra step. So I'm going to go ahead and uninstall the add-in because I don't like add-ins. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to go into the add-ins, get add-ins here. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to actually, maybe I should sign out first. Let me just click here and make sure that I have signed out from the platform, sign out. And then I'm going to go into the add-ins. Get add-ins. I'm going to show you how to uninstall them in case you have installed them here. And I'm going to click on my add-ins. So if I don't see it right now, I'm going to click refresh because I just added that here, and I can see the Beautiful AI. So I want to go make sure here, and I want to make sure that I remove it because I just feel it's going to add extra steps. It's not something that I personally would be using. All right, so here's my final verdict on Beautiful AI. If you are a small business owner or a new startup owner and you want to get your pitch deck or your proposal out as soon as possible and you don't have a designer on your team and you want to do this yourself, Beautiful AI can be a great option for you. However, if you plan to export the files into PowerPoint and give them to your teams and then edit the files in PowerPoint, I can see that it's going to create more complexity for you. You're going to have the compatibility with the fonts and the way how Beautiful AI really integrates with PowerPoint. They don't have that compatibility. Now, I don't know if they plan to do that in the future and fix it, but as of today, as of the day of recording, I did not see it as a viable option for me personally. I just found that it's going to create more work when it comes to the editing. While the initial idea phase is great and it works very well on the platform, if you keep the presentation on Beautiful AI, once it's exported into PowerPoint, it creates a lot more issues. So I hope this review helps you decide if you want to keep Beautiful AI for your company or you want to experiment with it. I mean, it's a really low cost if you get it for 1 year. If you're a new startup, it can help you get your pitch deck out quickly. However, if you have a designer on your team and you want to create something that is more long-term and that can be scalable within your organization, then stick to the software that's used in your organization. I still recommend PowerPoint because most people are Microsoft based. However, if you use Keynote, if you use Google Slides, everything works. The main thing is to get your message out, get your presentation done. I hope you found this review helpful. Until next time, ciao for now.